Over the weekend, I attended one of the largest charity record sales that I've really ever seen. A lot of interesting things happened. There's a few funny things I witnessed, and I even picked up a few records. So I'd like to show those off today, so let's get into it. So basically, this has been teased for a number of months, but the biggest record store in my city, they started posting these kind of cryptic photos where they just had like enormous stacks of boxes of records. People were speculating that they were opening a second store. No one really knew what was going on, but eventually a couple weeks ago, it was announced that they were going to be having this massive record sale where they had rented out like this huge office building and they had amassed like 60,000 records, and they were all going to be for sale for $1. They also were going to have like Blu-rays, CDs, cassettes, posters, everything really cheap. That was kind of the name of the game. I think it was for charity. I donated a can of chickpeas for the food banks to get in, so I mean, I think the money went to a good cause. But I've been to charity record sales like this before. Never anything this big. I mean, it's always tough to gauge just how big, the number of records are until you're actually there. But in my hometown, there was a charity record sale that this community radio station used to put on. All the records were $1 there. It was not a record store putting it on, so the record store obviously knows a lot about records and can pick through and knows what stuff they should sell in their store. So this is all the stuff that didn't make the cut to sell in their store versus like the charity one that I've been to before. It was, you'd find $20, $30 records in there, but generally if you weren't there immediately when it opened, you weren't one of the first like 10 people in line, you were getting absolutely nothing that was decent. It was going to be picked over immediately. Like when you're looking at that cheap of prices, people will buy anything that they recognize or is decent. Totally understand that. And this one, they opened at 8 a.m. and I thought about going and sleeping in, getting up early, getting over there as soon as it opened, just to like make sure that I'd be one of the first ones to get in. But I thought, you know what, that's such an enormous quantity, and like I have a decent enough collection. I'm not looking to amass just like a massive record, so I thought, I'll sleep in, I'm gonna bike over, I'll have like a nice morning. So I ended up getting there around 11:30. I biked over. So I mean, I didn't drive over, so like I couldn't carry like thousands of records. But like, yeah, when I got there, it was still pretty packed, but it wasn't so packed that you weren't like elbow to elbow, like waiting to get into stacks. There was so much there though, that it was like, you could get in and you could kind of search around. But I found out immediately that it was not nearly as picked over as I expected. The first box I went to, I think I pulled like 3 Frank Sinatra records, and there was a bunch of like recognizable stuff. And this was like the first box, like as soon as you walk in. So I figured this is the one that everyone had already been through. So I was pretty shocked to see that there were like titles that were that good kicking around. And like everywhere that I was looking around, I was seeing people pulling like Beatles records, Beach Boys records. I saw someone who had like a couple of Pablo Jazz records. I wish that I got to that box first. And I mean, there's people who had like stacks of like Angel and like Deutsche Grammophon, like box sets. I mean, like if I knew anything about classical records, I mean, I bet that event would have been a complete gold mine. But it was pretty shocking, the quality of titles that were everywhere. And I mean, like obviously they're usually not in great shape. Sometimes you find a title that you think is good and then it's missing a disc. It has the wrong disc. The disc has like a piece missing out of it, or it's so scratched that it's borderline unplayable. But the quantity of records people were walking away with was absolutely absurd. I think the thing that was the craziest, there was this dude who I saw leaving. He had a dolly, like you normally see like people carrying like crates of like Cokes into like convenience stores. He had a dolly with 4 boxes stacked up. He was leaving with that. So he probably had like 600 or 700 records in there. And I mean, like, I don't know what his plans were. If he thought he was going to resell them, maybe he just like loves stuff and wanted to like give it a second life. I hope he gets some good use out of them, but no clue what you would do with that many records. I mean, largely the records there are like not in good shape. They're not playable. But anyway, I'm all about sustainability. I hope that to think that the guy was going to go home and play all 700 of those in a row and have just the best time with them. But there's people left and right with like those big blue IKEA bags, and people had like huge boxes under the table and they were just sliding like title after title, and people had huge stacks. I mean, like after about like 20 minutes there, I had a stack of like 30 records, and I'm like, okay, this isn't sustainable. I don't need this many. Like, this is not okay, as I'm like lugging this big stack back and forth. And I mean, like a lot of the stuff I was finding was like pretty common stuff that, I mean, I could probably get a decent shape copy for like $10. but it was $1, so I felt like, oh, I should grab it. But I mean, like, I really did a lot of calling at the end. I mean, I found like the Guess Who's greatest hits. I found like a Creedence Clearwater Revival record, all those Frank Sinatra records I talked about earlier, copy of Isaac Hayes' Shaft that had only one disc. And then when I pulled out the one disc, it was a Sly and the Family Stone record that was like unplayable. One thing that was cool though is like, I know that progressive rock's really big here, but I saw like every single Emerson, Lake and Palmer record like several times, and I thought that was really interesting because like I know that those were like big selling records, but I would never think of that as like a dollar bin album, let alone to see like, 20 of them or whatever. The thing is though, it's like I don't think that I've seen as many copies of Lionel Richie's first album as I've ever seen in one place. I don't know if this was a bit someone was doing, but at one point I was flipping and there was 10 copies in a row, and I think I saw like 25. I got through maybe a quarter or a third of all the records there, and yeah, there were that many copies. I can't even imagine how many other copies there were. Plus, all the standard like dollar bin stuff. There's a million Anne Murray records. There's a million Barbra Streisand, Christopher Cross, that kind of thing. But yeah, people were buying absurd amounts of these things. Which I mean, like, whatever. People are stuff, guys, gals, whatever. I think people's houses generally aren't as big here, but I don't know where they're going to store those records, but they were excited about the titles. But I think that the thing that was most encouraging for me was it wasn't just, the normal crowd going and buying a ton of records. There's tons and tons of like high school and university students leaving with just like armfuls of records or like big grocery bags full of records. And I think that was super encouraging because like I worked near a record store that was right by a university, and I would see kids going there all the time just getting ripped off. Not necessarily ripped off, but they would be buying like 2 or 3 common records that, I mean, if they were patient, you could get those records for like $5, but they would be buying like $40 reissues of like Rumors or like Dark Side of the Moon. And I'm like, that's not the best way to build a record collection, where it's like, it's going to things like this or going to like these sales, it's digging around, it's finding titles where maybe you don't need them in pristine condition and you're willing to get a decent title for $1 and you're going to enjoy the music. Then maybe later on you'll upgrade. But that was the best, that was the highlight of the day to me. In the end, was just like seeing how many people excited and kind of really building their collections up. But in the end, I ended up getting, I think, 8 records. I ended up accidentally bringing the wrong record bag. I thought I brought my record bag that holds about, 20 to 30 records, depending on if they're gatefolds or not. But I grabbed the wrong bag and it actually only holds about 10 records. I also biked, so I knew that I was going to be limited with what I could actually bring back, which was good. So I ended up finding a corner by myself and sitting down and flipping through and deciding what records I actually should keep. In the end, I mostly grab records that I've been looking for, in some cases, years, but every time I see them, I'm like, I can get that record for $1 eventually. I'm not paying $8 or whatever. And there's some that I have plans to do videos in the future that I wanted these titles for those videos, and I actually was finally able to find them. So these are the records that I picked up. First one, it was the Motels, Lil Robbers. Pretty much mint condition. I mean, it's in the shrink wrap. I like that it has the sticker that says it was special, $7.88. I think this is an underrated, early alternative, new wave-ish album. I haven't listened to this in years, so it was fun to just say, like, even if I don't end up liking this or it's not as good as I remember, it was $1, like, whatever. I could give this away to someone else. I'm sure they'll get some enjoyment out of it. I picked up this Riverside record, New Orleans, The Living Legends, Billy and Dee Dee Pierce Blues and Tonks from the Delta. Complete blind buy for me. I mean, it's a Riverside jazz record. It's in gorgeous condition, sounds really good, musically extremely like dated, like New Orleans old school style jazz. But I mean, this is fun. It was $1. Like, it's pretty cool. Like, you don't see Riverside records in great shape for that price very often. This is a Quebec artist. This is Boule Noir, number 2. I know that this album has a different title, but I'm not sure exactly what the history is, but he's a Quebec disco funk guitar player. Super, super huge here. One of my coworkers introduced me to him. I've been checking out his stuff. So it's pretty excited to actually find one of his titles for like $1, and overall pretty decent shape. Haven't listened to it yet, but I'm excited to check it out. This is a progressive rock title that I've seen a million times, but it's always expensive. Jean-Luc Ponty with an enigmatic ocean. I think I saw about 100 Jean-Luc Ponty albums. He's a French violin player, jazz fusion kind of. So yeah, big prog rock. He's also French. Very, very, very popular here. This is a great album. Very excited to finally have a copy of it. And yeah, it's in really, really nice shape. This is one that I bought strictly for to do a shootout with, but it's a stereo copy of Ellington at Newport. I only have ever heard one copy of this, and it's the Mobile Fidelity version, which I have, and I really, really like. My understanding is this isn't a great recording. I love this concert, though. It's such fun music, but I've love the MoFi one, but I've always wondered if it's like definitive or how much better it is, or are there places where it's not as good as older copies. So yeah, I got this copy, no inner sleeve like most of these records, but this one's definitely in decent playable shape. I'm looking forward to checking that one out. One that I bought strictly for the album artwork, but it's Rod Stewart, Sing It Again, Rod. Love that this looks like glass. I don't think I knew that this actually was like die cut like this. I thought this was just like a cocktail glass printed onto like a standard sleeve, but yeah, I thought it was really cool. It's in complete. It's complete as well. An album that I've definitely owned in the past and is unbelievably common, but over the last year or so, it got reissued by Mobile Fidelity. People have been talking about it as like one of the best budget audiophile records, but I don't have my copy anymore. I lost it or I gave it away or something. But yeah, I finally got a copy of Blood, Sweat, and Tears for $1. It's in really, really nice shape. I'm excited to see, does this version sound good enough that you would never need to buy a reissue of it? And last record I grabbed, this is a Beau Dommage. This is a huge like folk rock band. This album is ultra common, but again, one of those ones I've just been waiting to grab it for like $1, and I finally grabbed it. This is a really, really good 70s folk rock album. If you're into that, you've never heard these guys, Beau Dommage, highly recommended. But yeah, overall, that was my time at the charity record sale, and I was spending a couple hours there. Got through about a third of all the records there. I could have spent all day there. I wish that I had no records, and that was my first, time going. I probably would have spent $100 and grabbed 100 things. I was going to say a million things. No, $100 of 100 records of dollar records is 100 records. But alas, still a lot of fun for a good cause. It was great to check it out. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.